Welcome to In Session Taking Back Control. This podcast contains discussions on topics related to mental health, which may include sensitive and potentially triggering information regarding violence, abuse, addictions, and other mental health conditions. The experiences shared by our guests are personal and represent their individual perspectives. They have voluntarily agreed to share their stories with the aim of fostering understanding and awareness. The content of this podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. It is not a substitute for seeking professional help, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified mental health professional for any concerns or questions related to your health and well-being. Listener discretion is advised. If you find any content distressing, we encourage you to pause the episode and seek support from a trusted individual or a mental health professional. Thank you for listening to In Session Taking Back Control, and we hope that the conversations that we share contribute to a deeper understanding of mental health. Welcome, Scooby, to In Session Taking Back Control today. In the session, we'll dive into your life, your experiences, and some of the challenges you've had in your life as well. It's been difficult for you, but also the things that helped you to take back some of the control in your life. And that's kind of the purpose of the session today. But just before we start, Scooby, if you don't mind, just for anybody that doesn't know you, tell us a wee bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
You got a spare 7 days, mate? Yeah, okay, my name's Scooby. I've did many things in my life, from running restaurants to DJing. I was a graphic artist. I was a rave promoter. I wrote a book. I've had a BBC documentary. I've had an art museum festival. I've done just about everything. I was even a butcher boy and I used to sell butcher meat. So yeah, I've had a really varied and coloured life. A life, a series of ups and downs. But now, eventually settled. I had a long period of illness from 1993, and I'm still in recovery. But I'm now 15 years of wellness under my belt, and I would say now I'm not chasing the big buck anymore. I'm just quite content, and things are good.
Fantastic. Good for you, Scooby. And I suppose because you talked about some of the experiences in your life there, which is quite deep, quite varied. But before we go into all the adulthood, just tell us a wee bit about your childhood. How did things start for Scooby? Where did you start and what was your early life like?
Yeah, I was an only child, and I was brought up in Bannockburn, the village, and it was always about music for me. I used to go to the youth club in the village, and at 7 years old, I got a chance to DJ, which was an unusual thing for somebody so young to do it. A person that had meant to do it, an older guy, didn't turn up one night. I got a wee chance to spin the decks, and that was my first affiliation with music, and I loved it. I've done a few podcasts in the past and that, and all my life, I think there was one question I was really worried about if I was going to do interviews or podcasts, and it came out the last time. There's a guy called Malak Ali who passed away. He played with a band called Ultrasonic, and he asked the question I was always dreading: what was the first record that you ever bought? And I've had to admit that the first record I ever bought was Benny Hill, Ernie the Fastest Milkman in the West, which done nothing for my street cred. Yes, I did that went to high school, and I was a prefect at the high school as well. I was actually the vice captain of the school. And what happened back then, the captain and the vice captain used to get the opportunity to do the discos for the school discos. So I went for working in the youth club, then doing it in the schools. And then at 16, I got a job in a licensed premises, so I shouldn't have really been there. And I started DJing there. It was a place called the Tamdoo, and it was amazing. So I think the Tamdoo was 1979, 1980, and the music was just changing a wee bit from disco into like new romantic. So yeah, it was all about music, and always has been about music for me, really, definitely.
Brilliant. And you can hear that, from your very early years. So, I mean, thinking about it, was there any big influences in people or things that influenced you in your early years?
Yeah, it was. I was heavily influenced by the church. My parents were Christians, and my dad was quite a big character in the church. And I used to go to the church quite a lot. At an early age, I bought a guitar when I was like 8 or 9. I saved up my pocket money, and I bought a guitar. And I was dreadful. I was absolutely dreadful with it. But I knew three chords, and if you know three chords, you can play anything. So I used to wing it with the guitar and play away. And I remember I had an old aunt who came over from Canada, and she bought me a cassette player. I always remember it's called an ITT cassette player. And
Yeah,
I started buying cassettes, and I was listening to things like Rick Wakeman, with like prog rock and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And it inspired me to get into other things as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So heavily influenced by the church and it sounds like your parents as well. So kind of moving on, because you mentioned as you were coming out kind of the 70s and stuff and coming into the 80s, you know,
Yeah.
you mentioned your music career, which is vast and wide. Can you share some of the stuff that first got you involved in the rave scene kind of back in the day?
Yeah. So at 16, I was working in the Tamdu. It was like a gang hut for underage people, and the music was on point. It was things like Visage and Magazine and Spandau Ballet, and
Right.
it was fantastic. Everybody else was dancing to disco records. We were playing things like the Cramps and God knows what. So that was great. And then I got the sack for there, and I moved next door to a club that was next to it. That's for the older people were and the cooler people. I can remember DJing there on a Monday night at 7 o'clock, and people were, there was 200 queuing outside at 7 o'clock on a Monday night.
Wow.
But back in those days, to get a license, to get a late license, you had to serve food. So you went in, you paid your money, you got a ticket, and then they stopped the disco at 10 o'clock and they handed out chicken in a basket. That was the only way you could get a late license. Everybody's eating chicken in a basket. And those were great days. So I'd kind of moved up a step from a music point to there. Then in 1984, I went to work in Ibiza. That was my first season away in Ibiza. Again, the music was incredible. I
Yeah.
came back for Ibiza in '84, opened up a nightclub in Stirling called Rainbow Rocks. Again, great music. What was great about Rainbow Rocks was I'd taken back the Ibiza influences. At that time, it was still about disco and club music.
Right.
When I came back, I was playing things like the cult She Sells Sanctuary and Van Halen Jump and U2. And it didn't make sense for a disco to be playing that. But they were the biggest records in the club that summer. And that was the summer that Live Aid was on as well. So it was like a big pot of soup, Declan. And it worked really well because of that.
Aye. So I mean, sounds like when you came back though, you influencing some of the music scene as well because of the changes that you brought back.
Yeah, yeah,
Would you
did.
say?
I brought I brought my own style of music. I've never ever followed the pack. I've always done my own thing, and I would work really hard at sourcing music to make sure that nobody else had those records. So '85 was good. And I ran a restaurant for a wee while, and went back to Ibiza, and then kind of moving on, getting into the rave scene that you were asking about. The rave scene started in 1988, but the whole reason it started was because in 1987 in Ibiza, uh, there was four key DJs, a guy called Paul Oakenfold, Nicky
Aye.
Holloway, Danny Rantlin, and Jeff Young. And I was DJing in a big club there. That was when Ecstasy came out. Those four DJs came into my club, then went to Amnesia, which was like the place to be, took their whatever and saw the light, came home for Ibiza that summer and started Acid House in the winter of 1987. That's how the whole thing kicked off.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, massive names there as well, you know, that you're talking about starting your club.
Yeah, and they were still standing my listening to what I was playing.
Fantastic. And you know, the curious thing for me, and I don't think I've ever asked you this before, so, and I'm sure it'll be some of the, in some people's heads when they're watching this, where did DJ Scooby come from?
Don't have a Scooby. Now, when I think it was when I was a kid, I used to watch Scooby Doo, eh? And it's been
Right?
really strange because I'm having a real battle with my conscience here. What do I want to get called now? Because there's different ways of spelling it. It's Scooby, and that seems a bit childish to me now. But there's also Scoobz, which I think that in my head sounds a bit better. But what I do now, I write it as SC, two emojis, two smiley face and emojis, and a B and an S. So that's how I'm kind of signing off the Scoobs.
Yeah. Aye. I've definitely seen that once or twice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thinking about the, like, I mean, you talked about some of the events you've been involved in, the experiences and stuff, and can you describe any of, like, the most memorable events or parties that you've been involved in during that kind of era? Do you know, that real high peak era for you?
It's been so varied and vast. I've been DJing in front of 15,000 people in Ibiza. I used to run events in an old ballroom in Glasgow where there was 2,000 people in it with an all-night licence. The Monopolies Commission should have been there because it was just a licence to print money. I ran a rave in a safari park. I've done an all-night event in a roller arena where at 1 o'clock in the morning I took people from the discotheque, gave them a set of roller skates and put them in a roller rink. And people, people in a roller rink at 4 o'clock in the morning, is the safest, health and safety was right at the window that day, Declan. So I've done loads. I've done absolutely loads.
Brilliant, and got away with it.
Yeah,
Excellent. And, I mean, you must be the only person to do a set in a safari park, surely.
yeah. But it was really strange when we got away with it one year, then we went back the second year to do it, and the cops were there, and there was 3 busloads. It was just a small thing. But there was 3 busloads turned up at the venue, and the cops just stopped it right away. You're not getting in, eh? So I had to phone up a friend that had a nightclub in Stirling called the Foo Bar. And I said, Tracy, it's Scoobs here. So, how you doing? I says, yeah, fine. She said, I says, have I still got a guest list on the Foo Bar, Tracy? She says, yeah, of course you have, Scooby. I said, I need 150 to get in. And we got them in. So it was all
Did
right.
you? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, I mean, some amazing experiences there, you know, and memorable experiences by the sounds of it.
And the other thing as well is that the music at that time, I can always talk for days about these things, but kind of like to talk about that whole Ibiza thing. The guy who was the godfather of the whole thing that started the whole thing off, who everybody pays homage to, is a guy called Alfredo, who sadly know very well now, is staying in a home in Ibiza. But Alfredo, he was a trailblazer, so I always remember this night. At that time, the clubs were open air. And they were open to 7 in the morning, and they were
Right?
open air. And I remember he played this incredible record. It was Little Louis French Kiss, it was called, which is like just opening up the whole dance field altogether. And it was at the end of the night, and he went for a banging house track. And after that, he played Jimmy Nail, There Ain't No Doubt, which is like a big cheesy pop record. But that
Yeah.
was the spirit at Ibiza for me, to have the courage to do that. And I think that's what I've always done. I like to throw in a curveball.
And you can hear that in all the things that you've done. You've been creative and adventurous and taking chances. And like you say, got away with most of them. But I mean, it's not all been good and fun either. You know, you're quite open about talking about some of the experiences you've had with your mental health. What do you want to kind of talk us through how that happened and diagnosis.
I've had three diagnoses in my mental health career. The first one was bipolar, and then they went from bipolar to schizoaffective disorder. I thought that sounds really cool, having schizoaffective disorder. But basically, what schizoaffective disorder means, they don't know. That's what it means. They don't know what's wrong with you. So I had that for a few years because they didn't know what was wrong with me. And for then, it then went on to chronic bipolar. And if I think back, I was a hyper kid, Declan. There wasn't diagnoses back then, but in reflection, I would say that I had ADHD. I was always, if I was going out for a night out, I would go to 5 bars and 3 nightclubs. I couldn't settle in one place. I was just chasing things all the time. In 1991, I was doing quite well, managing Fat Sam's in Dundee, making a bit of money, had a property. And a friend told me about a thing. It was a bank called the BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. And it was a high rate of interest and a low rate of tax in there. So I thought I'll put my money in there. And my dad had just retired. And he had his nest egg, had all his life savings. So I says, put the money in with me. So I had my life savings and my dad's life savings in it. And to cut a long story short, the bank went bankrupt. It was an industrial scale fraud all over the world. Shetland Islands lost £23 million, and I lost my dad's life savings along with mine. And I could live with mine, but losing my parents after 40 years living, I was racked with guilt. And my mum and dad were really pragmatic about it. She said, look, it doesn't matter. It did matter. For 2 years, I didn't tell anybody, and that ate me up. I tried to do the best I could. Then in September 1993, that was the first of the breakdowns that I've had. I've been in 36 different psychiatric units. I've been sectioned 23 times, and I've been locked up for 1,276 days. I always remember that, which is 3 years, 6 months, and a week. And that's like going to uni or a trade, So I had my trade in mental health doing that. And at one point, I was locked up for 10 months out of 1 year. So it was quite hardcore what I'd done. The first part, the trigger, was the guilt of losing my mum and dad's money. But on top of that, there was a heavy drug issue because I was 16, I was taking drugs. It started at cannabis, and then when I was in Ibiza, it was coke, and it was coke every night in the 80s, because coke wasn't a prevalent thing in the UK, but it was coming straight off the boats from Colombia into Ibiza. So it was coke. Dabbled a wee bit in ecstasy. Didn't like it. I didn't like the hallucinogenics, because when you take hallucinogenics, you're out of control. And when you're DJing, it's all about control. So they two didn't match. That didn't feel that right. But I was a stoner. I just love hash. There was one point I used to DJ in a place called Duck Bay Marina, which is 23 miles from Stirling. And I'd got there on a Saturday night, 23 miles to get there. And before I'd leave the house, I'd roll 7 joints. That was 3 for the way up, 3 for the way back, and 1 as a backup, just in case. And when you're smoking camels at that kind of level, it shows you got a problem, man.
So, I mean, I know you're saying that the bankruptcy was one of the things, the tipping points for you. Do you think it was maybe an amalgamation of the drugs that kind of led into it, and then that was just that over the edge kind of thing, the bankruptcy?
So what happens? Your brain's still forming until you're 24. That's when you're forming there. Between 16 and 24, I was caning drugs on an industrial scale. So I didn't do myself any favour. Now what I've got a thing called a chemical imbalance in my brain, which I'll have for the rest of my life, and I need to take NHS drugs to compensate that. The drugs I take lithium, which was a dirty old drug, but it's now a super drug again. I take a thing called Epilum. So lithium is a mood stabiliser. I take Epilum, which is for epilepsy, and there's a strain in Epilum, I think, called sodium valproate. That's another mood stabiliser. I take a thing called risperidone, which is an antipsychotic. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being weak and 10 being heavy, the drugs I take are 8 out of 10. Hardcore.
Yeah.
But I do other things to compensate it.
Okay. So, because I was just going to ask you that, what are some of the things you do to kind of keep yourself well within? So you talked about some of the prescriptive stuff. And what other things do you do, Scoobs, to kind of keep yourself well?
Yeah, one of the things I do is, I've been doing this for 12 years. I go to this wee village in Perth called Braco, and I go up there once a year. I take a sample of my hair, and I take my NHS drugs with me, and they go to one side, and then there's 189 minerals in your body, and they then check what I need to compensate for the NHS. Once that's done, once the test is done, it takes a couple of days. They then send me the minerals and the nutrients I need to take to compensate the NHS rates. Because if I didn't do that, I would look like a junkie. You know, I should have the golden face and look gaunt and terrible, but I don't, because I do this to keep myself well.
Right. Wow.
Other
So,
things I do as well is, I've been practicing Buddhism for 12 years, and that's kind of like mindfulness. You know, I'm up at 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning, and I chant and do that, get myself in a really good place. And if I don't do that in the morning, the rest of my day goes really badly wrong. It's all about
right.
routine and purpose and structure for me. It's even like, so I get up, take a shower, make sure I shave, just simple things of self-care, you
Yeah.
know, do my chanting. And that's also, go to a coffee shop at 7 o'clock every morning. I get my coffee, I sit with my pen and a bit of paper, and I write my list of what to do today. But that's part of my routine as well, Declan.
Yeah.
That keeps me well, you know. So it's great, eh? But
Fantastic.
there was times,
And that,
there was times when it wasn't great. There was times when I remember a friend telling me, so there's always two wards. There's an easy ward and there's a hardcore ward. And I spent a lot of time in the hardcore ward. And I remember a friend telling me, he came in to see me one day. I was eating a pot noodle. The pot noodle wasn't on the pot. The pot noodle was on the carpet on the floor. And I'm on knees eating a pot noodle, not even with a fork, just eating it with my mouth off the carpet. So I went from being up there to doing that. So I've seen both sides of things.
how did you cope with that? That, I mean, like you say, getting probably paid thousands a night to be in that position, like your friend told you about the pot noodle. How did you cope with that? That kind of,
It was, to be honest, it wasn't me coping with it. It was my friends and family couldn't cope with it.
yeah,
And some of them used to cross the street when they seen me when I was in the bad period. I never gave it any second thought. I was just on a mission. You know, I was just on a mission to. It was just a blur. The 90s and the 90s was a bit. I can't mind so much,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
survived, and I'm going to tell the tale with you, mate.
exactly. And hopefully people who are listening to this can hear the fact that you can turn things around. Even because I remember you telling me a story about a psychiatrist as well who had an opinion about you. Can you tell me a wee bit about
Yeah,
that, Scoops?
yeah, yeah. It was it was a German psychiatrist who will remain nameless. I was just at maybe 97 or 98. He was young, he just started in. And he told me that I was the worst patient that he'd ever had. Now, how does that give anybody any hope, Declan? It doesn't give anybody. And it was a real blow to me for him to say that to me. Um, and then I got better. So I've been well it's nearly 15 years I've been well now. And I had a wee job in the local hospital and hospital radio.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there, I met him in the corridor. It was a new hospital. I met him in the corridor. In the ward, he's got power over you. In the corridor, he's just another man, eh? I spoke and he's like, I've been well 6 years. Got a partner now, we're happy together. Got a wee job in the radio, became a Buddhist. And it was nice. It felt like sort of door, eh? And then the following Tuesday, got a phone call from an old pal of mine. They always used to be in at the same time together in the ward. He's like, Scoob. He says, I've just spoke to the man. I knew who the man was. And he said, the man said you should use me as an example. So it went from being the worst person he'd ever had. He's now telling patients to use me as an example. And in Buddhism, what that's called, it's called turning poison into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an incredible thing to know that the psychiatrist that said I was the worst patient he'd ever had is now turning poison into medicine, which is amazing.
What a phenomenal story, though. To be able to kind of turn that around and be that vision for people, especially after he's had that opinion of you. So it's testament to the hard work you've done.
I'm working at it every day, Declan. It's, I don't sit in my laurels and watch a telly or that. I'm always chipping away at things. I believe that the philosophy that I believe in, it teaches you to demand things. It's maybe like the power of attraction a wee bit, and I demand, and I try to see the best in people. That's quite hard when people are nice. But I believe I've got to see the best in people.
I remember you telling me about that doctor specifically, because not only did they say to that one person, can you use Scoobs as that kind of template for getting well, but now they actually use you as well for students, don't they?
Yeah, that's so. Aye, well, I've got a CPN comes to see me every 2 weeks, and he brings a student with him, and I have a wee chat with the student. I give her a wee talk, and a bit much like the talk that you heard. Give her some advice. One of the last things I say to them when they leave is, "Please be your authentic self." That's quite important. I tell them about having a 51% day. Lecture to 23 students in the cigarette room that I used to sit in for 15 years. And they're going to be building my talk into the curriculum at the university. So, for being the worst patient I've ever had to be in the curriculum at the uni, it was fantastic.
How does that feel to hear that? That you're.
You know what it is, Declan? It's like, it's just a switch. It's just like turning on a switch. It's just a story.
Yeah.
It's just a story. And I feel really privileged to be able to share my story with people.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody gets something out of it, I'm happy at that. But if I was actually to think about it, it'd probably do your head in, but half it. It's mental. But I'm just grateful that I'm still here, that I can share my story, by the way.
Aye, absolutely. I'm going to come to a story. I'm going to ask you to tell it because you tell it very well. But I remember you telling me about a time that you were in one of the institutions for 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, you had a secretary on the ward and everything. Tell us a wee bit more about that, Scoobs.
All right. So I was going back and forth, in and out quite a bit. And at this time, I was a record producer. I was making records. And I had a really good relationship with Virgin Records. I was working with a guy called Andy Thompson, who was the head of the dance department. And I had a few tracks out with him. Anyway, I went on well, and they ended up in the lock ward, the heavy duty ward. But still wanted to make records with Virgin. So I told Andy Thompson that I had a new phone number. This is my new phone number. The new phone number I gave Andy Thompson was the payphone number in the psychiatric unit in Falkirk Royal Funray. And what I'd done was, I told everybody that was in the ward that day, if a guy with an English accent phones up looking for me, just tell him you're my secretary and pass him on to me. And I got away with that for 6 weeks. running,
Oh,
a, running a record company at a psychiatric unit. Mental.
that has to be a first for sure.
Uh,
But so, you've some phenomenal stories and some really harrowing stories as well. You know, when you're talking about from the pot noodle to running a record studio from a psychiatric ward and music
I'll
producing Virgin Records.
tell you another funny. This is a cracky. This is my favourite one. One of my favourite ones. The last time I went, so I became the poacher turning in the gamekeeper. For a year, I
Right.
actually worked for the NHS as a peer support worker in a crash team in mental health. And because I was on that team, I went unwell again. They couldn't put me into Forth Valley because I was a worker in Forth Valley. So they sent me to Livingston. And always what used to happen, Declan, was that whenever I'd go unwell, I would get a bee in my bonnet about things. Like one of the things I remember vividly was finding out that there was VAT on milk. And I thought that was horrendous, kids with no money and family, government taking their 15% off. And I just cracked up. I ended up getting bundled into a police van and getting taken away and getting injected really badly. But my last admission that I had, the thing I had to be in the bonnet about was the Masons. I had this big mad thing about the Masons. And the Masons did great work, didn't get me wrong, but I didn't think that at the time. And I wasn't sure, but I knew some story about a shoe or a slipper, or your size or your number, something to do with that. So I went and bought a pair of slippers, and I bought the slippers. And then the next day I got admitted to Livingston, and I was up there for 3 months. It was a really bad winter, there was nobody to see me, and it was quite hard then. So I came back down the road, and the hardest part when you've gone through all this isn't the actual admission. One of the hardest parts is you've got to go back to your house, and your house is carnage because your manic state that you've been in, and you've got to go back and get some sort of reality and get it
Yeah.
sorted out in some sort of way. So I'm back at the flat, and I'm getting things sorted out in the flat, and I'm tidying up. Anyway, I goes into the fridge, and the slippers are in the fridge. I'm like, the slippers are in the fridge. How's that? And then I realised what my chain of thought at the time was the slippers were too hot a topic for me to deal with that day, so I better put them somewhere to kill. So the slippers lay in the fridge for 3 months.
I bet they were a cool pair of slippers though.
Brilliant.
And so, you're looking back and laughing at this stuff now and your experiences, and and they're like some funny stories, But imagine at the time it wasn't, trying to go through all
No,
this, and it wasn't. You didn't think I'll be laughing about this in 13 years.
no.
Yeah. But I suppose there's a message in that as well, Scooby, because what we're the purpose in this podcast specifically is talking about taking back control, and how do we get to that point where, because you can be in a really, really dark space and struggling, and like you said, in some of the wards that are, like some really grim wards as well. I've been on a few, and they're not comfortable, some of them. So to think that you've got somebody like yourself who's been through 3.5 years of institutionalization and got to the point now where you're speaking to psychiatric students, CPNs and all these kind of people, that that there must be something in that you can turn around and kind of think, do you feel like you've come out the other side, or is it day by day?
Every day there's work to be done every day, Declan, for my chant in the morning. It's all about routine and purpose and structure for me. That's what keeps me going. And I have taken back control. But there's kind of like four things that it's like a mantra to me that I think about all the
Yeah.
time. The first one is I've accepted I've got chronic bipolar. I used to deny that. There's nothing wrong with me. I've accepted. Acceptance is everything. That's the first thing. The second thing is I've taken responsibility for my illness. In 13 years, I've never missed a tablet. Before, the minute I thought I was better, the tablets were in the bucket. Always. Tablets were in the bucket. I've taken responsibility now. The third thing is I've got 3 triggers. First one is less than 6 hours sleep. I know if I don't get 6 hours sleep, I need to do something about it. And I can self-medicate if that happens. The second thing is, believe it or not, cigarettes. If I buy a packet of fags, I know I'm going unwell. Normally what I do, I didn't buy it the way I do it. I didn't buy a packet of fags. I buy a packet of cigars and start smoking cigars like fags. And that's how I know I'm unwell. And then the third thing for the trigger is social media. I don't do social media. V does the social media for me. I don't have Facebook on my phone or I've got Messenger. I don't look at any of that. Because when the book and the documentary came out, I got really badly trolled by close friends, incidentally. So I don't have anything to do with that. But the last thing, and this is the one that people don't get, and I only worked it out a couple of years ago, and this is the most important one. So people go unwell, and then they get better. What they forget is, and this is what I've just kind of realised recently, is I'm still vulnerable. Vulnerability, knowing you're vulnerable, is a strength. It's not a weakness. Knowing your vulnerability is a strength, and everybody forgets that. It's not a weakness. So it's acceptance, taking responsibility, triggers, and vulnerability. Those 4 things are like a mantra to me every day, and I think about that all the time.
And it sounds like a way that you're able to hold that stuff that's happening for you. I mean, I suppose it's good advice for other people who are maybe at that early stage of their journey with diagnosis as well, and working on some of the things, that some of the keys that you've talked about, acceptance and finding and understanding the trigger points as well, because we all have them. So it's just at what point and what severity does it take you to, and it's really good advice and guidance there that you're given from your experience.
But the other thing that really helps me as well, I think I've spoken to you about this a couple of times, is that, again, because of my beliefs, which is really strong, what I believe in, is that depression is predominantly in the past, anxiety is nearly always in the future, and I live my life looking at a camera in my kitchen, having a cup of tea and a wee bottle of water in the now. And once you learn how to live in the now, it's the only way to live. So I'll say that again because I think it's really important what I said there.
Absolutely.
Depression is predominantly in the past. Anxiety is nearly always in the future. And the key is to live in the moment.
Yeah, that's great advice, Scooby. And and you hear it so much as well, living the here and now and living the moment. But it's so hard to do for people because they've got so much going on in life that
you need to learn to do it.
They're so consumed. And it takes work. It takes work. But I mean, you mentioned there a couple of projects that you've done. The book and the documentary. Do you know what I mean? Because as if you're not doing enough. Tell us a wee bit about the book and the documentary. What happened?
I had an art exhibition as well, I'll tell you.
Oh.
So the book came about. My part V was going to Glasgow one day for a meeting. It was a Saturday morning, dropped her off at the train station, and I wanted a rolling scrambled egg. I wanted the scrambled egg made in a pot. I didn't want it made in the microwave. So I knew one place in the whole of Stirling had done that. So I racked up there, orders my rolling scrambled egg, cup of tea, sitting reading the Daily Record. And this guy walks in, and I'm the only guy that's sitting in the restaurant. And he said, is that the Daily Record you're reading? And I was a bit flippant. I went, it's the same old rubbish, mate, isn't it, eh? And he said, is that the restaurant review that you're reading? And I says, aye, but it's not as good as since Tam Cowan left about a year and a half ago. So anyway, the guy ordered a coffee and sat next to me. And I'm reading the Daily Record. in the restaurant review, and I get to the bottom of the restaurant review, and there's a photograph of the guy sitting next to me. He wrote the restaurant review. And I'm like, I'm really sorry, mate. Anyway, I was a big foodie at the time, and we were talking about different restaurants and that, and there was a mutual friend that we knew. So I phoned up my friend on the Sunday and said, I want to go for some eat with that guy. So Shad's phoned him, and the guy called Gary Ralston, he said, I heard you met Scooby. He says, aye. He says, who is Scooby? And Shad says, Gary, you're off his Stirling, eh? He says, that's right. He says, it's worth a meal. Just take him to dinner one time. And I went and done 23 restaurant reviews of the Daily Record. I went half the time as Scooby, another half as Stuart Cochrane. And every time we were going there, we were just talking and telling stories. And he says, look, I'm going to write you the first chapter of your book. You can do the rest. But he wrote it, and the stories came out that well. He actually gave up doing the restaurant reviews to write my book. And it took us 2 years. There was 3 people involved. Somebody helped with research. And how I done it was, I'm dreadful with technology, so I bought a tape recorder, and I bought 40 TDK C90 cassettes, and I went round 40 people and I interviewed them. And when I was interviewed, that was the spine of the book. And at the end of it, when I interviewed them, I said, any memorabilia or that? And they had loads of tickets and posters and flyers, and I'd designed all of them. That was me that had done that work. So out of that came an art exhibition in the Smith Art Gallery in Stirling, which ran for 3 months. And at the end of it, on the last day, we had a music festival in the garden at the back, which you just couldn't get your head around about it. But Gary, who had wrote the book, when he worked with the record, he was sent to America there was a story about a cyclist called Graham Aubrey trying to break a world record in a place called Battle Mountain. And there was a filmmaker called David Street over there filming that. And Gary got pally with him. And Gary kept, I didn't know this, but Gary just kept saying, this should be a documentary. This should be a documentary. So I met David one day in Bridge Island in Stirling. Gary organised it. He just talked away. I'm just like that saying. And I went to the toilet, and David said to Gary, that's all bullshit. That can't be right what that guy's saying. That all must be rubbish. Gary says, no, it's true. So that's how the inroads came to the documentary. So, and this is how nuts things are, mate. I swear to God, this is how nuts things are. 30 years ago, if somebody said to me, they're going to have chronic bipolar, I'd have laughed at them.
Yeah.
7 years ago, if somebody said, you're going to write a book, no chance. 6 years ago, if somebody said, you're going to have a BBC documentary, no chance. 3 years ago, you're going to have an art exhibition, no chance. I just don't know what's ahead of you, man.
Aye. And do you know what? It's interesting. It's all come from, or a lot of it's come from that period in, your dance days and,
Yeah.
all the DJing time. It's all been fed through that. But, and some of it fed through your unwellness as well, because, that's part of that story. It's part of who Scoobs is now, and that acceptance of who you are. It's really interesting to see it all kind of come together to formulate something amazing, art exhibitions and a book. And
do you know the mental thing about it as well, Declan? The 90s are coming back with a vengeance. That's when I was peaking. I was at my peak.
Aye, it is. It's all going retro again.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't end there, does it, for you? Because I remember you speaking to me about this, and I don't know if you want to talk about this on the podcast, but you're also working on a play.
Yeah.
You're like the most creative man in the world.
The place called the Fag Room, and the play is about 3 people in the smoking room in a psychiatric unit, which is possibly the most volatile place in Great Britain. Well, just what you say, things happen. Been getting help with a guy called Derek Robertson to do it. He's been great, Derek. And Terry here. I'm just really blessed I can do these things. I'm back playing a wee bit of music again as well, and it all just seems to be right for me right now, you know.
Aye, aye. And I'm sure that all aligns with some of the beliefs that you've got through Buddhism as well.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of things I took out of Buddhism when I first started doing it, the reason that I did started doing it was that it said that by chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the thing I said, would change my karma. And I didn't think my karma was very good, particularly with women. You know, so I spent 4 years trying really hard to make amends. I pretty much all did it as well. But the other thing that I realise now as well is that it gives me courage. And that's about taking back responsibility. You know, I've got courage now where I've never had courage before. And the other thing that I've got is wisdom. What wisdom, where I see wisdom, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. You know, it's more about what you don't say where the wisdom comes in. So these things are prevalent to me now, and they're there, and they're part of my core now, which weren't there.
Absolutely. And thinking about that last point you made there, just around wisdom, and based on your experience and your life experience and what you've been through, is there any messages that you would share with some of the listeners who are going to be listening to this, who might be facing some of the similar challenges that you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I said, the acceptance of responsibility, you've got to, you've got to, you've got to be aware first. That's the first thing. You've got to be aware of what's happening. Then you can turn it around, you know. But awareness is everything as well. Basically, what I would say is there's some great tools out there as well you can do, Declan. If you do the research, you know, there's some amazing things like mindfulness is a big thing. That's a big sexy thing in the NHS right now. That's good. Talking therapies, you know, they're great. I've been for counselling, I've done things like that. You know, even things like come for a walk. That makes it a bit stupid, you know, connecting with the world, you know. And one of the things I think like people in your job and I tell them and I can maybe people that you're saying to share it is about having a 51% day. You know,
Hmm.
every day you should have at least a 51% day. If you've had an 80% day, that's great. If you've had a 42% day when you go home at night, do something about it. The first thing you do when you go home at night is take a shower, and that'll get rid of the stress. Then once you've done that, phone up your best pal, get him to tell you a joke, have a cheese toastie, read a book, put on one of your
Yeah.
favourite tracks, watch a comedy in the telly, do anything but get it over 51. And if it goes over 51, 9 times out of 10 when you wake up in the morning, you're in a better place than you were last time. That works really well, eh?
I remember you talking to me about the 51% rule that you live by, and it's one of these things that when you reflect on it, you think, well, that just makes sense. But sometimes we forget that because we're so enthralled in life and in the chaos of the day that we don't stop to kind of say, what can I do at the end of this day to kind of top myself up to just be at 51. Um,
Do you know
so
what?
great,
Do you know
great
what I think?
advice.
Do you know what I think's wrong with the world right now? That's fucking good. Well, it's too much overthinking, Declan. There's too much overthinking. You know, you need to turn your head off at night. You know, when your head's going 100 mile an hour and it's buzzing a bit, and that's not healthy, man. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
51% can deal with that.
Is there anything else you feel that you want to cover, Scooby, today that you want to add to kind of share with the listeners that we've maybe missed out on? Or
It was a struggle, but what I feel, if I can turn it about, Andy can turn it, because I was in the gutter, Declan. I lost
Mhm.
everything. I lost my parents' life savings. I lost everything I had, my car, my house, my money, my mind, my
Yeah,
integrity. I lost everything. But I've managed to turn it about now, and I can walk with a bit of confidence, and and feel okay, and it's okay to feel okay. It was hard, but I've done it, and it's really strange. The thing that really helped me with this whole, I hate the word journey, let's say trip.
Yep.
COVID.
Really?
I was 18.5 stone. And when COVID came, I went out and walked, and I lost 4 stone.
And the physical side as well obviously helped you then, just for your
Yeah.
confidence and stuff as well, it sounds like.
And the other thing as well is that, like, I can get away with this because it's still and it's me. And I'm in town, I'm in the village. Every single person that I walk by, I say good morning to everybody. And not only do I say good morning, I say that's a great pair of trainers you've got. I try to engage them a wee bit as well. Don't think you can do things like that in a city. I'm God fortunate I can do that here, but that's what I do, and it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm back playing some music. I'm doing a lot of DJing again. I've got the hunger for that. Don't see myself being the oldest DJ in the world, but I'm having fun with it, and it's great to do it again.
Good. What a roundup of where you're at, eh? And I think, I suppose for this podcast, I mean, you've kind of touched on it, but I suppose it's called Taking Back Control, and you've talked about loads of things that you do, and you continue to do on a daily basis to kind of work on taking back control. And there's a bit of a kind of closing tradition and reflection that we do with guests, is if you could think of maybe one thing that really stands out for you that comes to mind that helped you take back some control, can you think what it is and why?
Yeah, 100%. So my life is all about music. I had 53 singles, 2 number 2s and a number 1 in the charts. And then when I went unwell, I blamed it all on the music. And for 12 years, 13 years, I sold 12,000 records for 500 quid. Ridiculous. Blamed it on music. And then when I started seeing V 12 years ago, what was happening? I'd try to get back into music. I'd go to the record producer I was with, and we'd try to do things. And the minute people heard a wee sniff I was going to hear music, the alarm bells were going everywhere. But when I went with V, and I started seeing V, the very first thing she said is, get back into your music again. And a lot of people were worried about that. But the sparkle came back in my eye. And when I talk about music, the sparkle's in my eye again.
You can see it, anytime you talk about music, you're just, you light up. So, and you're a gifted musician, so why not? Why not stay with it? So
it's been the biggest part of my life.
Yeah. And it's a gift you've given other people as well, and it sounds like you're going to continue to do that. You're not hanging up the decks yet.
No, far from it.
Fantastic. Well, Scooby, thanks very much for joining me in session and taking the time to share some of your heartfelt stories and some of your fun stories as well, albeit that they were in a difficult space and time. But thanks for joining me, and I really appreciate it and sharing how you took back control.
Thank you, Declan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of In Session Taking Back Control. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might benefit from our discussions. For more resources and support, please visit us at Better You, and don't forget to tune in for another inspiring conversation. Until next time, take care and take back control.